The Pakistan Army says Islamabad has exposed Indian state sponsorship of terrorism in its dossier containing incontrovertible evidence. In an interview, Pakistan Army spokesperson Major General Babar Iftikhar said India's position has weakened globally since the revocation of the special status of occupied Kashmir. He said India is trying to tag the indigenous freedom struggle in occupied Kashmir as terrorism. Iran's Guardian Council has approved a law obliging the government to halt UN inspections of nuclear sites. The council was the last hurdle in the legal process before the law came into effect. The law also approves stepping up uranium enrichment beyond the limit set under the 2015 nuclear deal. Bangladesh has begun transferring several hundred Rohingya refugees to what the UN worries is a low-lying island prone to cyclones and floods. Almost 1 million Rohingya, most of whom fled a military offensive in neighboring Myanmar in 2017, live in squalid camps in southeast Bangladesh. Azerbaijan says nearly 2,800 of its soldiers were killed in weeks of fighting with the Armenian forces over the Nagorno-Karabakh region. The country has now fully reclaimed lands around the region under the Russia-brokered truce. Meanwhile, Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who is a strong ally of Azerbaijan, is due to visit the country next week. The US has reported the highest number of COVID-19 deaths in a single day. The virus claimed 2,658 lives in the last 24 hours. Meanwhile, India remains the second worst hit country with more than 9.5 million cases. Pakistan has registered nearly 3,500 cases and 39 deaths overnight, taking the toll to over 8,200. Globally, the virus has claimed nearly 1.5 million lives and infected 64.5 million people. And in football, Paris Saint-Germain has defeated Manchester United 3-1 in a Group H clash in the UEFA Champions League at Old Trafford. Brazilian Neymar scored twice to drive his side against the 10-man United after midfielder Federico Rodriguez was sent off. Those were the headlines and detailed stories. Right after a short break, stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. Pakistan Army says Islamabad has exposed Indian state sponsorship of terrorism in its dossier containing undeniable evidence. In an interview, Pakistan Army spokesperson Major General Babar Iftikhar said the international community has taken up the issue seriously. He said India's position has weakened globally since the revocation of occupied Kashmir's special status last year. He said India is trying to tag the indigenous freedom struggle in occupied Kashmir as terrorism. The spokesperson said New Delhi is trying to divert the world's attention from atrocities in Kashmir by repeatedly violating ceasefire at the LOC. Responding to a question regarding the China-Pakistan economic corridor, Major General Babar Iftikhar said India has been trying to stop the timely completion of the project. He said the CPEC is not only a game changer for Pakistan, but it will benefit the whole region. The UN has adopted a resolution presented by Pakistan and the Philippines on religious harmony and peace. The resolution has been approved with a majority of 90 votes in the General Assembly, while no country voted against it. Introducing the draft, the permanent representative of Pakistan, Ambassador Munir Akram, said Prime Minister Imran Khan has repeatedly called on the UN and the international community to counter Islamophobia and promote peace. Akram said deliberate vilification and negative stereotyping of Muslims only perpetuates clash of civilizations. Referencing France's offensive caricatures, he said condoning provocative actions only encourages cultural disharmony. Akram said the resolution also acknowledges the call of the High Representative of the UN Alliance of Civilization, which discredited religious mockery. Pakistan has welcomed the agreement reached on rules and procedures by the Afghan parties in Doha. At a Foreign Office briefing, spokesperson Zahid Hafiz Chaudhry termed the development another significant step forward. Chaudhry said the agreement reflects a common resolve of the parties to secure a negotiated settlement. The Foreign Office spokesperson said Pakistan will continue to support the intra-Afghan negotiations. He said Islamabad hopes the dialogue will lead to an inclusive, broad-based and comprehensive political solution. Chaudhry said such a political settlement will pave the way for a peaceful, stable and prosperous Afghanistan. The US military says it will keep 2 larger bases in Afghanistan despite reducing troops to 2,500 by January 15. Speaking at a think tank, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff General Mark Milley said the US military will continue aiding Afghan security forces and carrying out operations against ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Milley says the US will also keep several satellite bases. The top US general said Washington had achieved a modicum of success in Afghanistan. He termed negotiated political settlements with power sharing as the most effective way to end the conflict. This comes after the Kabul administration and the Taliban reached a preliminary deal to press on with the peace talks. An Iranian watchdog has approved a law obliging the government to halt UN inspections of nuclear sites. The Guardian Council also urged Tehran to step up uranium enrichment beyond the limit set under the 2015 deal. Under the new law, Tehran will give 2 months to European parties to ease sanctions on Iran's oil and financial sectors. The powerful 12-member council approved the Strategic Act to revoke sanctions despite government opposition. President Hassan Rouhani has termed the parliament's move harmful to diplomatic efforts aimed at easing US sanctions. But the stance of the Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who has the last word on all the matters of the state, is not known. For more on this, we are joined by Habib Abdul Hussain, an analyst from Tehran. Thank you for your time at Indus News. First of all, Iran's Guardian Council has given the final approval to a bill aimed at further reducing Tehran's nuclear commitments. So can this bill be considered Iran's response to the assassination of its top nuclear scientist, Mohsen Fakhrizadeh?
Well, Iran has already said that it will respond to the assassination and it will take practical steps. This can be one part of the practical step, but the response is already there. I mean, Iranians have tried to be strategically patient over the past years after signing the nuclear deal with the P5+1 group of countries. But the retaliation and response is something else. Iran reserves the right, it said, of course, to retaliate. And this is not the first time. Fakhrizadeh was the 5th Iranian scientist to be assassinated, and apparently, according to many reports, by Israel. So the issue of retaliation is different. But yes, this comes in the fallout over the assassination of Fakhrizadeh, and it is seen as sort of practical solutions and practical approach by the Iranian parliament, which already criticizes the government for not taking actually firm and decisive action over the JCPOA, and the other sides, I mean the European and the US, a lack of commitment, what they call.
Mr. Abdul Hussain, US President-elect Joe Biden said he is still committed to his promise of returning to the nuclear deal. So can this bill damage global diplomatic efforts in restoring the 2015 nuclear deal?
Well, I think this will also serve as a pressure leverage against President-elect Biden, because it's just a matter of who is going to take the first step. Biden says that if Iranians are in full compliance with the deal, then they will start remove the sanctions. But this is not how Iranians view the situation. They want the US to take the first step, and that is revoking the sanctions and removing the punishment against Iran. So this will be a sort of complicated for both sides, especially for Americans and President Biden, given the fact that Donald Trump has already scorched the airs for diplomacy. And he is expected to continue this path over the weeks to come, in his final days in office. So Iranians are more demanding and expect Joe Biden to take the first step. And they're not supposed to do actually the same thing unless the US stops and revokes the sanctions.
Mr. Habib Abdul Hussain, thank you very much for talking to Indus News. We really appreciate that. Now, moving on, Bangladesh has begun transferring several hundred Rohingya refugees to what the UN worries is a low-lying island prone to cyclones and floods. The first batch of refugees was taken to Basan Char, a flood-prone Bay of Bengal island that emerged from the sea 20 years ago. Authorities have reportedly planned to move around 2,500 people to the low-lying island in the first phase. This has sparked concerns among rights groups fearing for the safety of the refugees. Almost 1 million Rohingya, most of whom fled a military offensive in neighboring Myanmar in 2017, live in squalid camps in southeast Bangladesh. Azerbaijan says nearly 2,800 of its soldiers were killed in weeks of fighting with the Armenian forces over the Nagorno-Karabakh region. The country has now fully reclaimed lands around the region under the Russian-brokered truce. Armenia has not yet disclosed a final death toll for its military, but a health ministry official confirmed last month that over 2,300 soldiers were killed. Meanwhile, Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who is a strong ally of Azerbaijan, is due to visit the country next week. The UN says Libya faces a serious crisis due to the presence of foreign mercenaries and military bases. Special envoy to the UN chief, Stephanie Williams, was speaking at the second round of the Libyan political dialogue. Williams mentioned there were 10 military bases and 20,000 foreign troops in the country. She said massive foreign weapon consignments coming into Libya undermined the peace process. She said foreign forces were only in Libya to serve their interests. Williams added there were blatant violations of the UN arms embargo. The UN envoy said the best way forward is through a broad and inclusive political dialogue. Acting on President Emmanuel Macron's Islamophobic policies, France has decided to launch an inspection and monitoring campaign over 80 mosques, threatening to shut them down. Paris claims the unprecedented measures are an attempt to curb extremism. Interior Minister Gerald Darmanin said the government has decided to take massive and strong action against religious separatism. He said they will be inspecting 76 mosques very closely to determine their relation and links to extremism. Darmanin added the decision to close some mosques may come as the result of inspection. US President Donald Trump has once again renewed his unsubstantiated electoral fraud allegations. Trump's video messages on social media come a day after Attorney General William Barr ruled out massive electoral fraud. This report has more.
Despite suffering major setbacks on legal fronts, with courts dismissing lawsuits on electoral fraud, the US president persists his defiance and refuses to concede defeat in the presidential election. In video message, President Trump reaffirmed his resolve to keep up his fight against the outcome. The president claimed there is overwhelming evidence, but many in media and the judiciary disagree with him. Trump said he had tens of thousands of ballots needed to overturn the results in battleground states.
We already have the proof, we already have the evidence, and it's very clear. Many people in the media and even judges so far have refused to accept it. They know it's true, they know it's there, they know who won the election, but they refuse to say, you're right. Our country needs somebody to say you're right.
President Trump has so far refused to concede defeat, and his legal team continues to file legal challenges to the outcome. Meanwhile, his personal attorney Rudy Giuliani has presented several witnesses before Michigan House Oversight Committee. Giuliani's key witness, Melissa Carone, said she saw at least 30,000 ballots counted multiple times.
This election, I will say, these Democrats took every avenue possible to commit fraud in this election, and what I saw on the 3rd and 4th was over 20 counts of fraud being taking place in front of my face. And this isn't counting, you know, the ballots that are found in rivers, the ballots found under rock.
Giuliani blasted Barr for failing to thoroughly investigate the evidence he uncovered of widespread voter fraud.
The U.S. has reported the highest number of COVID-19 deaths in a single day. The virus claimed 2,658 lives in the last 24 hours. Meanwhile, India remains the second worst hit country with more than 9.5 million cases. Globally, the virus has claimed nearly 1.5 million lives and infected 64.5 million people. More in this report.
The world now appears to be just days away from the first rollout of a coronavirus vaccine. But U.S. officials warn the pandemic will pose the country's grimmest health crisis yet over the next few months before vaccines become widely available. Most Americans might not have access to a vaccine till June 2021. Hospitalizations from the virus topped 100,000, more than double the number at the beginning of November.
By the end of December, the administration suggests that there'll be enough to vaccinate 20 million people with 2 dosages, which is 40 million dosages. That means 6% of Americans. Gives you an idea of where we're going to be coming into January. And those 6% will be prioritized as the healthcare workers, seniors in congregate facilities, etc.
Europe, meanwhile, has been forced to dampen its Christmas celebrations amid the ongoing surge. Italy has banned the midnight Christmas mass and all movement between regions amid high COVID toll. Spain has capped year-end parties at 10 people, restricting all domestic travel as the country's healthcare systems near a collapse. Germany, too, has decided to extend its COVID-19 restrictions until January.
If the infection incidence continues to develop the way we have been seeing in the last days, then we will meet again on January 4. The federal states will extend their measures from December 20 until January 10. This means that basically we continue as we are now, with the exception of the special Christmas measures until January 10.
Despite being a rare success story, Australia has ruled out an early opening of international borders. The country aims to complete a review of Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine by January 2021, despite UK approval. While Russian President Vladimir Putin has ordered a large-scale voluntary vaccination program from next week. Moscow will have produced 2 million doses of its own vaccine within the next few days.
In Pakistan, 39 people have lost their lives to COVID-19 over the past 24 hours, raising the death toll to over 8,200. The Health Ministry says nearly 3,500 people tested positive for the disease overnight. The ministry said there are more than 51,000 active COVID-19 cases in the country. It said out of nearly 407,000 countrywide cases, close to 347,000 have recovered so far. The ministry said over 177,000 cases have been detected in the Sindh province, while Punjab has reported over 121,000. In the capital Islamabad, over 31,000 have been infected so far. It's time for a short break. We will be back with more stories. Stay tuned. Welcome back. In Thailand, at least 5 people have been killed by flash floods caused by monsoon rains. Authorities say the flash floods hit 7 provinces in the southern part of the country. According to the Interior Ministry, floods have affected more than 255,000 households. The affected region is home to the country's rubber plantations that account for the world's major natural rubber supply. The BUREVI tropical cyclone is heading towards the southern region of India after causing slight damage to Sri Lanka's east coast. Colombo issued a red alert while forbidding fishermen not to venture out to sea and ordered school closure for 3 days. Sri Lanka's Disaster Management Centre said no casualties and damage has been reported as the cyclone was minimal. Meanwhile, India Met Office has issued a red warning to parts of the southern states of Tamil Nadu and Kerala. It said the weather forecast predicted heavy rainfall and high-speed winds in the states. India's Weather Office said it expects damage to thatched huts and power and communication lines could also be affected. A middle-aged Maya beekeeper has won the 2020 Goldman Prize for her work to protect the environment. Details in this report.
Lady Peck Martin has waged a legal battle against pesticides and genetically modified organisms in Mexico for more than 10 years. Also called Guardian of the Bees, she works for the care and preservation of Melipona bees. This year, she won the Goldman Prize, dubbed the Green Nobel Prize, in part for her ongoing struggle against U.S. agrochemical giant Monsanto.
They began to open up agricultural areas to be able to plant transgenic soybeans. Today, they are still deforesting. The area for soybeans continues to grow. We were also concerned about the whole issue of beekeeping.
In 2000, Monsanto began growing experimental plots of genetically modified soybeans in Mexico. And in 2012, without consulting local Maya communities, the Mexican government granted the agrochemical company permits to plant GMOs in 7 states.
The projects will generate income, but not for the communities, not for the indigenous people. We are cheap labor for those projects. When you realize and become aware and look at what is happening, you say this shouldn't happen.
Peck led a legal campaign against the Mexican government. The Supreme Court ruled the government violated the Mayans' constitutional rights and suspended the planting of transgenic soy.
OPEC countries and Russia have resumed talks in a bid to define oil policies for 2021. An independent research consultancy, Energy Aspects, noted tentative progress in discussions between OPEC plus members. It said the ministers are inching closer to a compromise that should break the impasse. Energy Aspects said it understood options include rolling over existing cuts into January. It disclosed a proposal to increase production by 1 million barrels per day in February, March, and by another 1 million in April. An initial round of discussions failed to bring a compromise on how to tackle weak oil demand amid a second coronavirus wave. Boeing 737 MAX has carried out its first flight with media on board after being grounded for 20 months. American Airlines 737 MAX flight sought to demonstrate the safety standards of redesigned jet. The 45-minute flight was a mere hop from Texas to Oklahoma. Media representatives were given a tour of American Airlines 737 MAX fleet's technical operations hangar in Oklahoma. Last month, the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration cleared Boeing 737 MAX following design changes and new training. The demo flight comes weeks before the first commercial passenger flight on December the 29th. In football, Paris Saint-Germain has defeated Manchester United 3-1 in Group H clash in the UEFA Champions League at Old Trafford.
Brazilian Neymar scored twice to drive his side against the 10-man United after midfielder Frederico Rodriguez was sent off. In a Group E fixture, Chelsea thrashed Sevilla 4-0 to strengthen its position atop the group. French Olivier Giroud scored all 4 goals for the Blues. In a Group G competition, Juventus outplayed Dynamo Kiev 3-0 with Cristiano Ronaldo scoring his 750th career goal. In another Group G match, Barcelona secured a comfortable win over Ferencváros 3-0 to remain on top of the group with 15 points.
Meanwhile, France's Stephanie Ferbach has become the first female to take charge of a men's Champions League match. The 36-year-old took charge of Juventus's Group G match against Dynamo Kiev in Turin. Stephanie Ferbach has made history by becoming the first ever female to officiate UEFA. Ferbach was also the first female referee to officiate a major men's European final in September 2019. She also holds the record of being the first female to take charge of a French Ligue 1 match in April 2019. Switzerland's Nicole was the first female referee to officiate in UEFA matches when she was put in charge of 3 UEFA Cup qualifying round games between 2004 and 2009. Another weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.